All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get seated so we can get started for one of the sessions that's probably one of my favorite sessions to have curated for the Knowledge Series this year. We're so glad that the government agrees with us on this and that we have their support on this very, very important topic. And we've got some phenomenal people on this panel who've been doing the work around this for the last decade and even more recently, and they really have so much insight to share on how the work has been translated, received, and how much work we still have to do. So I request your attention as we sit down for Green Sets, how to run a sustainable film shoot and normalize climate storytelling. That word normalize is so, so very important. I would like to call on stage first Jess Hines, the founder and producer of Fingerprint Content, here all the way from the UK. She's been in this space for a long time, and all of her upcoming projects, even the ones she's working on, all have an environmental ethos to it. So please welcome Jess Hines. We also have Pragya Kapoor. She's the film producer and co-founder of Guy in the Sky Pictures. From Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, she produced that film, which actually was one of the first Indian big-budget films to normalize climate storytelling and make sure that green sets are part of the everyday. So Pragya is going to be here to share her story, as well as stories of future films she's working on that are around the same kind of ethos. So please give it up for Pragya. We also have Divya Ravichandran, the founder and CEO at Skrap. Skrap is a phenomenal environmental firm that's teaching and educating businesses and movie producers and directors on how to make this part of the norm. Last but not least, we have our very talented moderator, Mr. Murtaza Ali Khan. He's an Indian film critic and journalist and does incredible work for the Sunday Guardian, Doordarshan, among many others. Please give him a round of applause. Murtaza, I will let you take it from here.
Just one request, since it's a sustainable session, they don't want the plastic bottles to here, so I think you should make a strong statement by taking these.
Yes, we will do that right away.
Take the plastic away. Thank you so much, Jitin. And this is a session that is also very, very close to my heart. Because I remember in 2006, something very important happened which really made me a lot more aware about environment and climate change. And this was actually when An Inconvenient Truth was screened for the first time at the Sundance Film Festival. This is this Al Gore film. And the great irony about it is that Al Gore came from a family of tobacco manufacturers. And his own sister died of, lung cancer. And they were always made aware by the doctors and experts that, this is something that's dangerous. But it never really occurred to them until it happened in their own family. And after that tragic incident, they decided to, shut off their tobacco business. And this documentary, it has traveled all across the world. It has won 2 Oscars. And post Inconvenient Truth, at least, people started talking more about, issues of environment, sustainability. And then, of course, David Attenborough, who is a very favorite, legendary filmmaker of mine, he made this film called Blue Planet 2. And we all saw this very disturbing scene of an albatross, dying after consuming plastic on this remote island. And it started this phenomena called the Attenborough effect. As people became more aware, they started changing their consumption patterns. And which brings me to, the case study that we have for you all today, which is the film Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, from the point of view of Indian cinema. It's really a pioneer in how it has pushed for, green sets in filmmaking, how to make it more sustainable, how to reduce the wastage. And we are really fortunate to have this panel, wherein we have Pragya, who has really, championed this cause with this film, and now with her other films also. She's really pushing the bandwagon further, and she's really, committed. And Divya, who actually happens to be an old friend of, hers, and both of them, Divya runs this amazing, initiative, which is Skrap. And in the corporate spaces, she has been quite vocal about, making things sustainable. So she came on board, and the two of them really, created this magic with Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, and how, it went sustainable and how it went green. So we'll be talking about that. We also have, one very amazing person with us, which is Jess, and she has been doing something similar, in a global sort of a way. We had a very interesting conversation recently off the line, and I got to know that she has made an amazing film very recently in Greece with Shruti Hassan called The Eye. And the things that she has done, to really take the idea of sustainable to the next level is staggering. So we'll try to talk about Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui. We'll try to talk about the different scenes that we have in offer right now. What are the challenges? Why there is such great resistance, in accepting this, because we all now are aware, we all have seen the inconvenient truth, we all know, that this is really a reality that's upon us, and yet, why, especially, people in the film industry who are supposed to be more sensitive, who are supposed to be more aware, who are supposed to be more enlightened, are still resisting to this change. So this panel discussion, which, NFDC and the Bazaar and Jitin and all, have really put together, the idea is to take this discussion forward. That yes, now we have had such a successful case study in form of Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui. We have had some amazing case studies, abroad also, and with Jess, taking the lead forward in that direction. I really don't see a reason why we should not, take it to the next level. So I want to come to you, Pragya, to begin with, since, Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, the film that you produced, is really the case study that, that is the starting point of this discussion. I want to understand, what made you, move in this direction, because anybody could have made this move, because Inconvenient Truth came out in 2006 when we all have been reading in schools, and different places that yes, environment really needs this. And yet, it has taken so long. But what was it that really made you take this call?
I think for me, it's been a very personal journey. It started off with me personally trying to make changes in my own life, in my family, and with my children. And from there, I brought it into work, which was my office. We tried to figure out how to minimize the waste in our office. And to a point where it became zero waste, we installed solar panels, and we segregate our waste at source. So for me, when we were shooting for Kedarnath, was actually where it started. That film, if you have seen, talks about the environment. It talks about sustainable development. Our main characters are advocating it to a certain extent that, do not overdevelop, do not, litter. These are conversations we were having in the film. But what happened while making the film was a different story. If you've seen the film, it's about the floods that happened in Kedarnath. So there was a lot of water that was used to recreate those sequences. And it was just a lot of water being wasted. Like you saw these plastic bottles that were lying here. They were like, we were shooting in the middle of April, May, so they were like at least 1,000, 2,000 bottles being consumed every day. And those small ones, it's not even like you're getting those big bottles and drinking. And everyone will have a sip, have half the bottle, and then just throw it. And it was such a painful thing to see that, hey, we are trying to say something with this film, but at the same time, what is our actions? So I think that's where it started for me. I was like, this is not right, and we have to do something about this. So when we started Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, I really wanted to see what we could do. And I knew Divya from before. I don't remember how we met. I think it was social media or something. And we were in touch for the longest time, and I've seen the kind of work she's done at festivals and different events. So I reached out to her and I asked her that, I have a little bit of a challenge for you. I know you have done events, but that's like a 3-4 day thing, and it's in one location and it kind of gets done with. Here I'm looking to make my film zero waste. And what that entails is a longer duration, multiple locations, and a lot of people who are extremely unaware about what it means to have a sustainable or zero waste set. But she took the challenge, and we somehow managed to get through this during COVID. And in fact, there was a point, because what happens when you're trying to do something new, there are costs involved with it. And at the same time, people don't really understand what you're trying to do. We are in the middle of COVID. We are already dealing with that. Everyone has to wear masks. You have to isolate. And there were so many things happening, and I was like, I'm bringing this one more thing on top of all that craziness that's already going on, and people like, why are you pushing the limits? It's already, difficult the way we have to deal with this film in general. So there was almost a point where it didn't happen because I was like, I can't deal with it. It's just too much. But then something within me just said that, no, it has to be done because if I don't do it, it will be on my conscience. And then I was like, Divya, just get your team and just start. I think we had started shooting a day or two or something. We were about to start when Divya and her team came in, and they kind of just took over and had to deal with the mess.
In fact, I want to come to you, Divya. From what I learned, it was a time when there was a big strike going on, and yet you had to deal with, I think hundreds of kilos of waste, and it was something probably that was never done in that sort of a way in Indian cinema. So what was it like when you came on board?
So we have done a lot of work with the entertainment industry. It was mostly focused on live events. Like Pragya said, we'd work with music festivals, large sporting events. But a film shoot is something we hadn't done yet, and the logistical and operational challenges of that is something completely different. Add to that, this was 2020, and it was COVID time, so we were also figuring out protocols around what is the safest way to do this, especially when it comes to waste management of hundreds of people. There's also PPE waste being generated. How do you handle all of that? And to add another layer, there was a waste workers strike happening in Chandigarh during that time. So it was a perfectly chaotic scene, which I love. Right? It was a great challenge to kind of take on. We kickstarted this at a very short notice. So what we ended up doing was the first week, Pragya was like, just get settled in. And our team just went around observing the sets, looking at what waste was being generated, where was it being generated. And we realized that at the end of each day, we had over 350 kilos of waste that was being generated and just being sent to community areas or to the landfills. So that really set the platform for what the challenge was. And given the backdrop of 2020, like I think it was many-fold. It was at least like 10 times as challenging. At a time like that, the challenge was to eliminate those 350 kilos of waste that is being sent to the city's municipality and landfills, which is already overflowing with trash. So what we were able to do through our execution is to bring that 350 kilos of waste every day down to 4 kilos of reject waste. That is all. Everything else was either reduced, recycled, or composted. So we went from 350 kilos to 1%, which was about 4 kilos.
Amazing. Before I come back to you, Pragya and Divya, I want to come to you, Jess. You mentioned about this film that you did in Greece,
Yeah.
Die, with Shruti Hassan. Could you share some experiences of how you made it happen and what are the biggest learnings for you that
Yes.
came out of this?
Certainly. First of all, thanks so much for having me here. It's really great to be here, and it's lovely to be on this panel with these two. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, so it's great to be on this panel with you two fantastic women, and the work that you're doing is extraordinary. We work with an organization. Our sister organization is an organization called Green Shoot. And Green Shoot was set up in 2006, and it was created by producers for producers, with the understanding that we need to find a way to reduce the carbon footprint for each of the each production. So it was created by a woman who was a first assistant AD. And so she could look at the script and see where the carbon is in the script. So she's created a carbon calculator that allows you to look at your script and not produce the carbon in the first place. So rather than a lot of these carbon calculators being back-end accounting tools, this one allows you as a producer to just not do it in the first place, which allows you to immediately reduce your impact. And then there are the ways of doing obviously the zero waste and also being sort of smart things like changing your generators to solar generators and things like that. But I think one of the things that I wanted to pick up on first before I get to the eye is what you both did sort of instinctively, which is this idea of benchmarking. So with the green screen platform, there are 3 levels: green, bronze, and gold. And for example, you do the bronze level, and just so you see, you do this, the easy fixes. You have a plastic-free set, you have things like that. And that allows you to reduce your footprint, reduce the waste, but also to benchmark as a storyteller and as a filmmaker how you're going to be able to do that. And then you can work up to becoming carbon neutral. So, for example, an enormous show like The Crown, which uses this, obviously that has many sets and many people and a lot of flying and all that, and that has gone in the 6 seasons from green, the first level, up to gold. And this last season of last season of The Crown was carbon neutral, and that's from that benchmarking and working. And one of the key things is also what you both picked up on, is how you get everyone involved. So you get all of the crew, you get the HODs, and you get the HODs to be able to bring on their people. And actually, what we do is we have meetings with everyone where we take them through what they can do as HODs, as maybe runners, whatever it is, so that they feel like they own the process and they own what it is. And then we specially train green runners, so that there is one person on the set who is responsible for making sure that everyone puts their stuff in the recycling, or so you've got that, and that actually acts as a way into an industry that for people that may not have that level of entry point to the industry because they've got a point of difference. So with the Eye in Greece, we shot some in Athens, but then we were shooting in Corfu. And Corfu, you're basically dry hiring the island. It's got nothing there in terms of much of a film industry. So we had to bring everything in from Athens, and big trucks across and everything. So we did a couple of things, because it was, again, trying to kickstart the idea of this in a new industry. So we did things like we did the plastic-free set. We did everyone had their water bottles with the eye on, all that sort of thing. So we had those baseline things, but then we also had one of the main producers of energy is not energy of carbon is the trailers. So none of our actors, including Shruti, had a trailer. We got them kind of Bedouin tents. I mean, we call them Bedouin tents, but they're actually just quite crap tents that you might get in a garden centre. But anyway, it's all about naming. So we had them, and that immediately cut out huge amounts of carbon. And everyone carpooled, and everyone was in it together. And it was, people feel like they want to leave this beautiful island in the same way that they found it. And so that was really important. We also did a thing with the Ionian Ionian University, where we worked with the film students and taught them how to do green sets, and we taught them about the importance of storytelling and weaving climate narratives into storytelling. So yeah, that's what we did.
Thank you so much, Jess. I'll come back to you, and maybe get into a little more detail. But for now, I want to come to you, Divya, and I'll come to you because the two of you, have to do a lot of back and forth in this. Tell me one thing. We all know that this is something that's important. And yet, I'm sure there is a strong pushback also at times due to various reasons. Since you have been on the field and you have been doing this now with Pragya, and now I'm sure you'll be doing it for others also. You have already been invited for doing these case studies. Want to understand, what are the biggest reasons why everybody is not, right now accepting this and going ahead that, okay, now we'll all go the green way?
I think there's a lot of interest. Most production houses know what the problem is. They are actively looking at solutions, but change is hard. It's really hard. And I think the biggest challenge is with the change being displayed in the budgets, really putting monies down to it, because it's simply something they've never had to do before. And if this is an afterthought after the budgets are locked in, it's really hard to bring it in. So it needs to start at that real pre-planning stage of adding it to the budgets. The second thing would be there is awareness, but there's awareness at the overall level, like there is plastic pollution, there is waste. Translating that awareness into action is a whole different thing. Because for that, it takes a lot of commitment, right? Like you may say, oh, we want to fight plastic pollution, but if you break it down into what that really means, and let's take a simple step like, let's eliminate single-use plastic bottles, and I think our panel started off on a great note with that. It's really hard because when everyone's on ground, they just want the most convenient, the fastest thing. They want to grab something and they want to run with it. Now, when you're eliminating single-use plastic bottles, and now you're saying, bring your bottles, I'll set up refill stations, and you have to use this. For them, they're like, oh, this is harder. I don't want to do this, right? So there's just there's friction with that. And I think it is our job to make it as seamless, to make this as fun, and to make this the right thing to do without it being that hard. So at Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, for example, our estimate is that we eliminated over 1.5 lakh plastic bottles.
Wow.
By just having water dispensers. And that could not have been possible without Pragya constantly sitting on everyone's head saying, I don't want plastic bottles on my set, right? If the production team and the heads are keen on this, it can happen. It's really not that hard. So I think just making it more fun, more approachable and accessible too. Sure.
Yeah, please do add some of your experiences as
So
well.
I just want to say also on the cost, that there is this idea that if you do things sustainably, it costs more. And you might have to have a line in for the Divya of your team, which is a very valuable line. But actually you'll find that in the long run, it costs, you save money. And that we just assume things that are sustainable are going to be more expensive, and they're not. And especially if you have to, you're shooting somewhere where you have to offset. If you've got your carbon for flights and for transport, and you have to offset that. If you switch to different fuels, if you switch to different types of mobility, and it costs slightly more, you still save because you're not paying for that offset. So there are ways that of when you're looking at your budget, and for producers, the budget has to be the bottom line, and being able to get all of that budget on screen. But you can do that in a way without it costing the earth.
That's such a great point. And just to add to that, the carbon offset costs, the transportation to the landfill, and the environmental cost of that is not on anyone's budget in India right now, right? In the UK, for example, if you have to send waste to the landfill, there's a hefty fee. In some cases, it becomes cheaper to have waste management than send waste to the landfill. In India, that is not the case. Everyone's like, why would I pay for sending a tempo to recycling and have a waste management team on board when I can, hand over money under the table to a private contractor for 3,000 rupees, and he'll go dump it somewhere, he'll just take care of it. I don't care what they do with it, but it's taken care of, right? So, our biggest competition is honestly with the landfills and how accessible and how cheap it is to access them.
Pragya, since you came out with this film and now it's becoming such a powerful and a very important case study, what was the reactions like, from the industry, like when they reached out to you? What were the conversations? Was it a certain level of curiosity, and how did you, react to that?
I think when we started off the shoot, everyone was kind of irritated by it and like, God, what is this thing? And I was also, because it was the first time and I really wanted to make sure that it was reduced as much as possible, I would go and look in the dustbins and, take pictures. And we had one WhatsApp group because it was COVID at that time. So everyone was on that WhatsApp group. And I would just take pictures of the dustbins, or if there was some trash lying around, I'm like, who threw this? Who did that? And, I was quite aggressive towards making sure that people actually followed. So initially, people were not very happy about it. But I remember the day when Divya for the first time shared what all was being upcycled, and when the food that was extra was being donated, I think that was the day for the crew everything changed, and they were like, no, 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 we have to do this, or don't waste your food. It will go to, it'll go to some village and someone will eat it, or, people started correcting each other. So on a set level, that was the major change that I saw. When we announced this to the industry, and we created a little BTS units just to show people that this is actually possible, I had a lot of my producer friends reaching out asking how we did this. And I think a few of them even implemented it. I think they got in touch with you as well and, tried to do this. But I think it's still kind of plateaued to a certain extent, because again, it's not something we have to do. It's something you do out of choice. And like you said, when you look at those numbers, for someone who does not understand what Jess just said, that it actually, and I will come to that later when we talk about what we did on my current film, it just looks like, oh my God, I'm paying this much money to this, but I don't have enough funds for this, for something else, right? Then you kind of feel like, let's not do this, because I really need this. And every film in India, no matter how much money you have, it's less. So you always feel that pressure and crunch that I need to spend the money where it's visible. No one is going to know about this. No one really cares about it. So that kind of, until you make it mandatory, people won't do it,
So one of the things that we've found is that by getting the stars or the actors and actresses, it's really good for their brands to be seen to be doing things in an environmentally sustainable way. And that actually, if you say to them, I don't have any money because I'm spending it on, but like actually they're more likely to come on board and do the role with the idea that they're doing something that they can talk about on Instagram and it makes them look great. And I would have to say that just be careful of the waste industry. It's not run by the nicest people, and that we've come to croppers with them in the past as well.
Like, just to Jess's last point, anytime we're doing a venue recce, especially for live events or for shoots, the first question our team does during the recce is also to find out what is the garbage mafia scene like out there and how much trouble could we get and what workarounds would be there. So yeah.
Jess, you told me that day that you have been coming to India, since 1990, and you have come around, 78 times, you even remember the count. So since you also know India and you understand India and, you live in the West also, I want to understand, how do you look at the resistance that you might feel you would maybe now come across in India vis-a-vis the West, because there are already greater awareness, there are already governments, there are already policies which are already, slowly rooting in that direction. But here in India, it's still in a very nascent stage, and as Divya also shared, that still it's just the awareness that's only gotten started. So how do you look at this, dichotomy, if I say it from the point of view of the West, say India, and vis-a-vis India?
I mean, I think that with all change, there has to be bottom up and top down. So the work that you're doing is very much on the ground. You're proving that it works, and you're starting to demand it of the people, and stars will start to demand it of the people that they work with as well. So that kind of normalization of that in the work that you're doing is really important. There is, though, I'm not sure if we have any government people here today, but there is a very strong role that government has to play in that. That you can have a carrot rather than a stick with it. That actually, if there's ways of there being tax rebates, or you can get certain grants for doing X, Y, and Z and stuff, so that you actually people can see the value in doing it, and that actually especially with some of the stuff that was talking about with the different states and wanting people to film there and their beautiful landscapes and their beautiful locations. Leave that the way it was, and take nothing, leave nothing, and so you can actually you can build it into the mandates that governments have to be protecting their landscapes, their peoples, and their sort of their beautiful sort of architecture and stuff like that. So there's a way of being able to show the government that by enacting things, whether they be like, if you do this, you're going to get penalized, or if you do this, you're going to get praised, that they have that there's a mandate for that from the people that they want to have them vote them back in or whatever it is. Filmmakers are terrified of their audiences and politicians are terrified of their voters. So, you can find ways to work it so that they feel like they're in combination with you.
Divya, I want to come to you and, a little curious about the kind of learnings you have had, of course, on Chandigarh and subsequently on other projects. And how can these learnings be of greater help in overcoming the obstacles that, right now we are dealing? One, of course, is budget. But I'm sure, with learnings, you can find out more ways of doing it more economically. Probably these case studies will also help you, to find some of these glitches which you can always iron out, further fine-tune it, reduce the cost, make the process more streamlined. So any specific things that you feel can be used to further propagate this message?
Absolutely. I think our key focus right now is on building more case studies like Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui. And for that, we're trying to fight that whole budget constraint by bringing in operational efficiencies, reducing the costs as much as possible so it's more approachable and, films can incorporate it. And I think those early adopters are really important. Like Jess said, that'll really help normalize this as like waste management and zero waste as the normal thing to do, and then help do advocacy and build government regulations around this as well. I think that's really important. One of our biggest learnings is that waste management has to be brought more to the forefront. Stakeholder participation is really important. We can't do this in isolation as, hey, we're the sustainability team, we're doing our thing, you do your stuff. So really building that excitement, engagement, and inspiring folks to participate, that is what we do really well. I think there needs to be more messaging on sets. So we do a lot of, on-ground messaging at key areas where we have people's attention, right? Because attention spans are so limited. Everybody's focused on getting their shots and getting the set running. But when they're having meals is when they have some headspace. That's a great space, the crew food area, to do messaging. Also, a lot of smokers on set usually, so we've started putting cigarette butts at shoots. And that's another great place to do messaging as well. WhatsApp groups are great because that's when everyone goes, unwinds, and when they look at it. We started doing real positive, feel-good messaging, so we share a lot of data. One of the things that really touches a chord with folks is to know about food donation. So I'll take a step back and share a story here with you. Every single shoot that we approached in the beginning, we'd always walk them through our process and tell them about food donation. All across the board, they were like, food donations? Nahi, nahi. See, the thing is, you've worked with events where you see a lot of waste. Here, we have 100 people, we make food for 100 people. There is no wastage. At one of the shoots, take a wild guess over a 50-day period, how much food, excess edible foods we salvaged from the shoot. Take a wild guess, how many kilos do you think it would be? With about 150 crew members.
Any guesses?
100 kilos, that's a lot.
Anybody else?
Across 50 days, or you can tell me across a day too. Any numbers? I want like 3 options just to get a sense of like what we think. 20 kilos.
How about, maybe like 200?
200 kilos of food. We had 6,000 kilos of excess edible foods across the entire shoot duration. Our project went from being a waste management project to a food donation and project across the cities. To put this in perspective, what does 6,000 kilos of food mean? It's about 12 to 15,000 people's meals, right? And we were doing this across 3 to 4 meal services, and this was all during COVID, when a lot of people in marginalized communities did not have access to food. We've gone to busties at shoots and donated food across like a 1-week period. And when we went and asked them, I hope the food quality was good, because we do a lot of food quality checks. We partner with NGOs like Feeding India, Robin Hood Army to help us really get it to the last mile in a timely manner, because it's so time sensitive. Within 1 hour, the food needs to be consumed. When we went to the busties, one of them sent a message saying, thank you so much. During COVID, since COVID started, in 6 months, we've only been eating dal chawal. This is the first time we've had such nutritious and dense food, and it's been amazing. All the kids have had the first really tasty, good meal in 6 months. So that's the amount of food waste. So just capturing pictures, capturing that data, doing that storytelling, because a film industry thrives on storytelling, and it's time we adopt that too. Once we share those stories, I mean, the crew is just so completely involved in the process. We've had crew members messaging us saying, you know what, tomorrow is my day off, but I don't want to sit in the hotel and relax. I want to come down with your team and help you with the food donations and whatever waste management you're doing. I'd like to contribute more.
Pragya, as a film critic, I talk to a lot of producers and I like to talk to a lot of makers, and I can tell you that it's not an easy job. It's really a very difficult job, and you want to reduce the overheads. And here you are, looking to actually, take this initiative forward. And I can understand doing it in one city, but as things become more complex, I'm sure now you are doing other projects and you will be shooting at different locations. Can you share experience of that? Like, how does things scale up once you just do it in one place and when you have different locations? And how do you take this, learning forward? And how do you make sure that you achieve the same level of efficiency even when you are doing a bigger project, which is not just restricted to one place or one city, but which is, maybe traveling in a way and also involve multiple locations?
So I'm just at the end of a project right now that we started earlier this year. When we did Chandigarh Kare Aashiqui, the main focus was how to reduce waste, because to make a film is wasteful. You're creating an entire world from start to finish, and there is so much that needs to be put into that. So when we started our current film, I wanted to see how to take it to the next level. The first thing I remember doing was that in everyone's contract, we put a little very mild clause, which was that it was the responsibility to do everything with an environmental lens. And initially, when everyone were reading the contract, they would be calling me up and like, Pragya, what is this? What does this even mean? It's a clause in a contract. It's a legal thing at the end of the day. So they were very scared that what if they do not follow it? So we had a language which was like, to the best of your ability, just to make everyone aware that we want to do everything in a conscious manner. Our sets, luckily this film is set, it's a period film in the 1920s. So all our sets were made with natural material. And we shot it over 3 cities. So we ended up taking the material to each city with us, because our art trucks are any which way going. So we're like, okay, as much as we can salvage from this set, let's use it on our other sets. And that's where the money save actually happened for me, because I might have spent a bit on my waste management, but the amount of money I saved on construction of set was huge. I was like, God, why do people not do this, And the other thing, of course, we did the regular waste management thing as well. When we did our recce's, the entire team, and even during shoot, most of us traveled by train and buses, which is something, if you tell anyone in today's, even an HOD, that you have to travel by train, it's like a no. We know the conditions of our train, and everyone is so used to flying everywhere. But my husband and director said that, you know what, I will also travel in train, and because, he's the head of the film, right? He's the captain of the ship, so if he's doing it, then everyone followed. So we actually had very few flights, people flying back and forth. Most people travel by buses and trains on this film, which is, again, a first. I don't even think I can tell an actor that traveled by train, because there's no way they're going to do it. But for Abhishek to take that initiative and say that, you know what, I know you're trying to set an example, I'm very happy to lead that. So he actually did that during the entire recce. And during shoot, he did take flights. I'm not going to say he didn't, but most of the crew were just traveling by trains and buses from one city to the other. So these were a few things that I, added on to this whole cause of trying to make sustainable films and minimizing the waste. My main area of concern, in fact, something I want to talk to you, and I know it's already happening abroad, is is costumes. You know, that's such a big wastage again, because you buy all these fancy costumes, you have designer clothes coming in, you're spending lakhs and lakhs of making all these costumes, and they end up in a petty, in some go down for years to come, not being touched, and then just rotting away, where we could easily just have like a huge warehouse for all the films to come and rent clothes for. I know it happens abroad, right? I mean, I've seen how it is, you know, at Universal or, you know, in other studios. Imagine if in industry, we just put all our clothes together from each and every film and had this huge warehouse where ad films, shows, movies could go and just rent whatever they need. And if there was something that was not available, then you buy it. Again, it's such a huge cost saving. You know, there's so much money to be saved, and you can utilize that money for better things. So I'm hoping to do that in some way or the other by combining a lot of producers and see if that's possible for my next film. But currently, yeah, that's my main issue is costumes. There's a lot of wastage still happening there.
Before I open to the audience questions, I would like closing remarks, from Divya as well as Jess. Divya, I want to come to you in a sense and try and understand, while you also sum this conversation up, that you have been working in the corporate sector and now you are also, doing the same, trying to replicate it in film, and you have a great case study with you. How would you compare, when you do it, say, in a typical, corporate sort of a setup that you have to spread awareness about this reduction of wastage and sustainability, and when you are doing it, say, on a film with, Pragya, how do you see these two?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, the crux of it remains the same. The messaging needs to be positive, it needs to be really compelling, and there has to be storytelling with it to really draw people in. The only difference, I would say, is that with corporates that we work with, it's a captive audience. It's an office space, and we're looking at them day in and day out. So the ability to build that culture of sustainability is a lot easier at a corporate. With shoots, because it's just so dynamic and locations are changing and people are changing, I think that's one challenge. But on shoots as well, we've seen it takes about 10 days for the whole behavior change and awareness process to set in. And on the 11th day, people are like, I got this. I know how to segregate my waste. I know how to use my, like reusable bottle, etc. But the core and the crux of messaging around this remains largely the same.
Jess, for your closing remarks, I want you to tell me about, how do you look at the future, as Fingerprint and, as this figure who has really been committed to taking this forward and making people more aware about it. How do you look at the future, and what are the biggest obstacles, for this? If it really, has to be done in a big way, then what needs to change?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to all drown and fry, do we? So we all have to get our act together slightly. Fingerprint Content, which is the film production company that I set up in 2020 with some like-minded folk, what we do there is we make films and TV for specific audiences around the world that have climate messaging running through the narrative. So there's two parts to what needs to happen. I mean, and Divya just touched on it with her messaging, is that we need to make sort of the normalize and shift that behavior change into it being from unconscious wrong action of people just chucking it to unconscious right action of just like segregating their waste on the 11th day. It's very biblical, except slightly longer. So there's that part of things, and then we need to be able to tell the stories. Climate change isn't in the future; it is now. It isn't happening to three men in a tin can in space. It's happening to us. It's happening to those we love. We see, endless stuff on the news all the time. So the stories that we tell have climate in them because we are in that space. So there's ways of being able to weave it in without it being hectoring, without it being, the idea of people, climate being a miserable thing that you get beaten around the head with like a like a wet fish, and there's ways of being able to sort of, and if you work with storytellers, and I'm sure there's at least some storytellers here in the audience, that actually it's about showing what the future can be, so that we as a species can get there. Because one of the things that we are, the one thing that we are good at as a species is telling stories, for good or for evil. We tell stories. We create our worlds over and over again every day. And so as storytellers, we have a duty of care to be able to tell those stories. They can be rom-coms, they can be horror, they can be thrillers. I love them all. And have these kind of ideas that we can work towards in them. So yeah, so that's the future for me, is telling the stories that will save the planet, but in a way that doesn't cost the planet.
Very well put. In fact, I would say that any awareness, it starts with a strong will. And now we know that, there's a very strong will. And we have seen how these three amazing ladies, have really made it happen. And they have really paved the way in their own way. And I can only see this movement. I told Pragya, when we met outside, that this is really a movement. And this movement is only going to pick up. It's only going to become stronger. So I would now like to open it for questions. If any one of you have any questions, I think we have about 5 minutes. We can take maybe 2-3 questions. Yes, lady in the second row. I'll come to you after this.
Hello, yeah. So I want to congratulate three of you, and it's amazing to see that there are 3 women who are working towards saving the earth. The visual itself is amazing. My question is to you, Jess. So before you go in for any shoot, do you prep your team? Is there a course or orientation that you take them through? What that process is like?
Wonderful question.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. Yeah, so there is. So as I mentioned, there's a process by which, first of all, you work with the producer and the writer and the director, and you work through the script. And the script is where everything happens. And there might be a line in the script saying the army comes over the hill. That could be one shot, or it could be 3 weeks. So is this Napoleon, or is this something? So there's that level of figuring out where in the script everything is going to be. And then as you onboard the team, you start to sort of explain to them how you're going to be doing things. And then when you have your prep meetings and your development meetings, you take people through what the process is, and you show them how the carbon calculator works. And because it can work for films that cost £1,000, or it's worked on Fast and Furious. We managed to get Fast and Furious's carbon footprint down by 1/3, which
Amazing.
is they don't do anything. So Vin Diesel was like, I want a solar powered trailer, and we were like, we can't do that overnight. So we put like a little windmill on top and some AstroTurf to make him feel happy. So there's that thing, and then it's the onboarding, and it's getting everyone to be involved in the idea. But it's also if the film has different issues in it that we're working with. So if it's about women and children, or it's about something like that, or if we've got campaigns that we know we're going to be running afterwards, then people who come in will be onboarded onto what those campaigns, that like shoulder campaigns, are going to be like, and how we want to create the impact and affect the change, that specific change that these projects are about. So there's 2 parts of it. There's the storytelling part, and then there's the sustainability part.
I think very well put. Lady at the back, yeah.
Sorry, this is a question for all 3 of you, actually. We are an independent production company, so it's a miracle if we just get to the end of a 2-day shoot.
Can we have a different mic? Can somebody pass on a different mic, please?
Sorry, my question is geared to all 3 of you in terms of independent productions that could establish some best practices, if you will, if there are resources, because as you rightly pointed out, Divya, a film set is very different from an enclosed office with set routines, because sometimes it seems a bit scazzy, you're here, you're there. But if there's some kind of outline of things that we could do just as sustainable practices, is there a resource that you could point us to for smaller productions? Much smaller productions at the scale of maybe what you used to.
There is a bunch of resources online. I think Green Shoots would be the ideal place to go to right now. And maybe that's a great suggestion for us to customize a simple deck for India as well. But Green Shoots is a great place. I think it was a great learning space for us too when we got started. But it's often easier for independent production houses to also adopt this. I think it's a lot more challenging for large budget Bollywood films, if I may say so. But independent production houses, it's I would say a little more easier to adopt and set those practices. The very first step would also be to just conduct a training for all the team members so everyone's on board with it. And yeah, there's a bunch of resources online. I'm happy to send across some of this to you if you can drop me an email.
There's also there's your website. There's Green Shoot, and BAFTA Albert have some suggestions as well. So there's a couple there for you, and also damn, I can't remember it. It's the American version. I can't remember it. I'll remember it and I'll.
Is it Green Council?
Something, no. Anyway, there's quite a few online, so go and trawl.
I think we'll connect with you offline and find all these names, and I think it's very important. In fact, Pragya told me that they have this amazing BTS which available on YouTube and how they worked on Chandigarh. I think we all need to watch that BTS. I think it would be a great learning. One last question we can take. Okay, we'll take, yeah. She already has the mic, so sorry. So, yeah, this saves time.
Hi, sorry. So, lovely panel. Thank you so much. I've been a sustainability and green living enthusiast, and being in this industry, it really, really helps to have something like this. So, thank you so much for that. I have two questions. Number one is, if you're shooting in a place like Mumbai, which is extremely hot and humid even during winter seasons, how does one tackle that? Because it's not really for the actors, but also for other talent. When you have a lot of HMU and in a place that's so humid, how does one go about it and save the energy of AC and fans, etc.? Second is, for every team member, we have scripts, right? And on a daily basis, you get sides printed, and there's a lot of back and forth, and you have like extra materials, especially on paper. I know, because I'm also a professional paper maker. It gets really difficult because there's like heaps and heaps of just scripts lying around. Nobody is using it because your director or your producer is telling to just print extra. So how does one tackle that as well?
I think my experience in Bombay, we use fans mostly. We just shot in May in Jaipur. It was about 50 degrees, and we were out shooting 12 hours in the day, and it was deadly. It was. We did have ACs. We had those portable ACs on set, like certain areas, but it was only in those areas. So there were certain tents that we had set up that if anyone needed to cool down or just take a break, you could come and sit there. We had put up, my light boys hated me for this, but those, what do you call those reflectors, those big skimmers.
Right.
In fact, we had put up skimmers for people to stand under to just like get some sort of shade, because we were shooting in a really open area. There were no trees, there was nothing, it was out in the desert. So we honestly didn't use much of ACs as such. Bombay, I've experienced shooting in May while we shot Kedarnath. Again, I think, when you're making a film, you're so passionate and you're so involved in it that you don't really care about the environment and the heat and all that. You're just in that moment. So we normally just use fans, and that's what, I don't know what other production houses uses, to be honest with you. But that's how we have done it. We'll have a few portable ACs, like 3-4 of them at certain areas if someone needs to cool down, needs to take a break. But it's restricted to that area. And it's available for everyone. It's not that it's just for actors or just certain key member. Anyone who needs a break, needs to cool down, can go and enjoy that space. Again, the ACs are not on at all time because we're shooting sync sound. So it's only during those break periods where you can actually go and use it. And for scripts, we send everything online. Like everything is sent on email or WhatsApp. We don't take printouts. In fact, the only person who has printed scenes would be the script supervisor or the main DA. That's it. Everyone else have everything on email. So that's how we have done it. And if you have to print, you print both sides, and then we send it for recycling. But that's
Jess,
what we have done.
Jess and Divya, please do add. Feel free to add anything to this.
Just to add to that, I think it's the Jennies, right? The Jennies are the beasts. And there are solar Jennies, which is such an obvious thing in India.
We don't have that here yet. This
I know.
just started
I'm working
off,
on it.
yeah.
I'm working on
Yeah,
it.
thank
Just
you.
watch the space. I've got you.
You need to come to India more often.
No, yeah, pulling my Jennies. But so for example, the last Bond film did everything with them, and that was not shot in only sunlight. So you know they're really good. So I think that's coming in, and that should hopefully change the landscape.
I, in fact, met someone on the last panel I did who was introducing this from Bangalore. But again, I don't know, again, the cost to this. Someone like me would go ahead and say, like, it's okay, we'll spend that extra buck. But I don't know overall. So I would love to connect and see how one can make this work, because generators is the biggest crime we do at a film set, because they're on 24/7, and you know there is so much consumption regarding this, and till date I have not had a solution for that.
And our waste sorting areas are somehow always placed next to the generator, so this is a personal pet peeve for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.